So today we'll be answering some commonly asked questions about refugees. Let's get started.
So what is World Refugee Day and why does it matter?
I really see it as a big tool for awareness because a lot of people have misconceptions and lots of confusion around why people are leaving their homes and also how to welcome them into their communities. What about you guys? Why do you think it's important?
For me, it's a reminder of the need for protecting refugees. So my family was displaced from Afghanistan. When we left our home, the only thing we had to go by was the fact that there is a convention that protects refugees.
Yeah.
That was the only the thing that we had, and so for me it's such an important day to remind everybody that a great deal of suffering had resulted in a convention that protects people who are fleeing war, persecution, climate change now, and we need to ensure that that stays as sanctified protection for people who are doing that.
It's also a really interesting day because more and more people are able to identify with it. It's a growing holiday,
Yeah.
I guess, in a sense, where people are realizing that they themselves are either going through it or will soon be going through it because their homes are no longer safe for them.
Yeah, I think even like defining refugee has become a big problem for people. Like you just mentioned, climate crisis. A traditional definition is people who are fleeing war and persecution, but when you think about the impacts of climate change, which is not something that you can, respond to just because of the economics of the country that you're in or the situation that you're in. You're not a migrant from that standpoint. You're not an internally displaced person. You're fleeing your country to another country for many different reasons. So I think even the definitions of refugees is becoming more and more important for people to understand, both politically, legally, and socially for us as well. Yeah.
Next question?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay, let's see. If you could snap your finger, what would you want the world to know about refugees? Let's start snapping.
I just want people to know that refugees are people just like us. They are people who are dealt a bad hand. These people are looking for safety, security, and health for them and their families. It's not some, invasion of your country or anything like that. It's an opportunity for us to really enable good ethical principles around helping the people who need it the most. And I just want people to know that they're just people like you and me with dreams, aspirations, and goals for themselves, and they were just dealt a bad hand.
To move is such a human thing to do. We've done it forever, and it feels really wrong that now we demonize people for trying to get to a safe place when they're experiencing the opposite. And one thing I would add, if I could snap my fingers, is to recognize the full humanity of refugees. So one of the things that I feel I struggle with is this idea that to deserve help as a refugee, you need to be some kind of a hero. You need to be, just like the perfect refugee. I think it's just people, and they deserve protection, and that means they occupy the full spectrum of humanity just as we all do, and it's not a case of being some kind of a perfect victim to deserve support and care and protection.
If I could snap my fingers, I would like everyone to know that no one leaves their home unless they have to. I really like to share that with everyone because I oftentimes find myself sharing this message with people, and I always ask, what would it take for you to leave your career right now? What would it take for you to leave your close family and friends, your community? What would it take? What would happen for you to have to make that decision? And oftentimes refugees and migrants, they don't have something happens in their life and they have to uproot in a day or two. My own family, our life completely changed within 2 weeks. My dad received death threats, and he was followed, and it got to the point that we had to go into hiding. And within 2 weeks, my parents, who were both lawyers, had their own business, were in their 40s, had 3 children, one about to graduate high school. I was 10 at the time, but my sister was 18. and you have to go because you have no other choice. So I think that if I could snap my fingers, I would really just ask people to put themselves in that situation. And I feel that when you think about it in your own little bubble, then you'll start to understand why people are migrating in such a rapid number.
Everyone has the right to security and safety regardless of what your skill level is, right? But even you think about, mothers who raise like 7 kids off of no resources and everything. It's just, they're incredible people and because of what they've gone through. And I think that's something like we should always encourage in the spirit of our communities and societies, which is like hard work, resilience. Like you came from, a difficult situation, you turned it around. So even though I believe you're totally right, like we don't want the hero stories to always be the reflection of who should get support and who shouldn't. But it's just really astounding to see that in so many refugees and immigrants that, I've seen work with. I don't know. It's just worth noting, I think, for people to understand.
There's also a lot of wisdom in those communities as we go through all these conflicts and change. It takes so much love and compassion for somebody to come to experience that kind of violence, to choose safety and nonviolence. And then, if you ask your Uber driver who's a refugee, he was probably a doctor, or he was probably doing, that's courage and wisdom, an incredible amount of humanity. So we can learn so much from those communities. And the other thing I would say is like, we can speak for ourselves. So, it's inviting refugees or people who have been through that to tell our story, to design what we need, to be involved in the services that are created for refugees, because everything that you need for that kind of leadership is already in those communities.
So I think we need to start changing that narrative and sharing with anyone that's curious or wondering why people are coming, not only their backstory, but also everything they're bringing with them, not only their professions, their cultures, their values, their essence as humans, and their dreams and their joys and their inventions.
And I think it's important for us to recognize our role in creating more refugees and more problems in the world, and how we can, forget blame, how we can actually learn from that to prevent more refugees and more problems in the world from coming. I think it would be remiss of us not to mention that component of this as well. Should we try the last question?
Yes.
All right.
You got the last one.
I got the last one. Yeah. How can I support refugees? That's a great one for you guys. On a lighter note.
Yes.
I think we all have to do our part on the big political advocacy things, whether that's, talking to your local government, talking to congressmen, things like that, to really try to push actionable change in our policies that can help prevent refugees and reduce problems for refugees and immigrants. There's all these new ways of being able to engage in making the change you want to see, and like we're at a new forefront in the world where everyone has to pick up the mantle and be part of some mission to saying, hey, we're not going to support continued policies and continued social racism that basically affects refugees and immigrants that come to the country. So
we work with a lot of kids, so if you are a teaching professional, if you're in a school environment, just please look out for those kids that are just entering the classroom that may not know the language. Don't expect them to perform at the same level of a native speaker, because it's not going to happen, and that causes a lot of frustration. So I think just be really understanding as a person that's going through a completely different experience than you, and instead of being hostile or having an opinion on it, just get to know the person. If you are a student, inviting them to sit with you at lunch, inviting them, to be part of the soccer team, let them know there are tryouts happening, and just little by little build that friendship. And I think that that's what's going to help us build stronger communities and welcoming communities.
Be kind. Be kind. Take your citizenship seriously. How people vote in places like the US and the UK makes a big difference, not just to the people that are fleeing right now, but the causes of people leaving those countries in the first place. And, I always just think it's, when you meet anybody that you meet, it's just an invitation to connect to someone else's humanity. And that's, when my family was fleeing, that was the thing that carried us through, just people connecting to our humanity, not in a pitiful way, but just as a human being to another human being.